Hey there. What's going on, my Jets family? It's so good to see you guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry I wasn't able to bring you guys the show yesterday because I really wanted to have on this awesome special guest who, excuse me, will be joining us momentarily. So he will be with us very, very soon. You guys know who I'm talking about, Mr. Turn on the Jets, Will Parkinson. Awesome dude, NFL analyst. As you know, major Turn on the Jets contributor, does their radio station with them. I appreciate all you guys here. See you guys in the comments. As always, I appreciate all you guys tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the Take Flight Spit and Fire podcast. You got Michael. Appreciate you, Michael. You're always there out of the gate, man. I love it with the first comment. Love it, man. Good news today. And that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about this awesome good news. I feel great. Well, like I said, as you guys know, mentioned it on Twitter, Will's going to be joining us in just a few minutes. So I was going to give it just, a little bit to before we get into it. But as you guys know, bring your comments, bring your stuff in the in the chat. Appreciate all you guys got. Tommy, appreciate you, Tommy. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate all you guys, tuning in, being there, being part of the podcast. Wilson, it's big news, man. So yeah, Will should be coming in any minute, but we were all, just biting our tongue, right? Like we weren't sure. Like we were pretty confident, right? Like we were pretty confident that we knew that from what we'd understood, there was no additional damage. It was only a trim, right? That's what we heard. It's not a full tear. The meniscus didn't fully tear, which would have been a lot worse. He just needed a trimming on it, which I was on. Shout out to Jeremy, Jets Chaos. He's freaking awesome. I come on his show a lot. We talk about the Jets. Our guy, True Jets Fan, is what his Twitter handle goes by. You guys know him really well as well also. Excuse me. So yeah, we were talking on Friday all about that. Talking about, the injury and how he was explaining that if it's just a trim, he knew a little bit more about it, was explaining that it really wasn't that big a procedure. He kind of explained it like it was really just like shaving a little off the top is kind of how he explained it, which isn't too bad. Again, the fear was like any injury, until you get in there, you don't know, right? And shout out to all you guys. Jess Mess, what's up, man? What's up? What's up? Got the yo with the extra O's. Yo. I love it, bro. I love it. I appreciate all you guys. Thank you for being here. But I think, and you guys may all agree with me, there was fear because even though we thought we knew, look what happened with Mackay, right? With Mackay, they initially told us everything was good. Right? They initially told us that he was fine. It wasn't that bad. We shouldn't be worried. And we were like, okay, we're a little worried. I mean, he didn't play at all last year. And then the news, right? So that's what I think, and maybe you guys would agree, again, shout it out in the comments, let me know. But I think that was why a lot of people, and maybe, again, if you guys disagree, but I think that's why a lot of people were nervous, right? We were nervous because look what happened with Becton, right? We were told one thing, and it turned out to be something else. And as people love to remind us, and I noticed that on Twitter, they love to remind us that, hey, if it is more, then we're looking at like 6 weeks minimum, then maybe 8 weeks. And some people were saying we're back to a year. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody shoot these people. Like somebody take these people out. Like what the hell? Like we were starting to feel good again. Right? So Jets Mess is saying, best case scenario, 4 weeks to heal, then 2 weeks to practice. So yeah, Will should be joining us. I just got a message from him now. He said he'll be in just about a minute or two. So perfect. He'll be with us in just a minute. I'm excited he's joining us, man. As you guys know, he's awesome. He's always got, insider scoops. He knows some people, which is great. Just like Connor Hughes, it's good to get that inside scoop, but a major contributor for Turn on the Jets, right? Has an awesome radio station. So yeah, I can't wait for him to come in, man. He'll be coming in soon. But shout out to all you guys. Again, appreciate the comments. Richard says, think of it as a root canal, but the geography is off. It's not a big deal. Okay, that's an interesting way to look at it. Okay, it's an interesting way. So yes, I'm excited about you guys. I got Mr. Will right here to join us right now. So without further ado, I'd like to bring the man in himself. What's going on, Will?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm good. I really appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be on. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And you're big with Turn on the Jets, right? Like that's
it's my host the Turn on the Jets podcast. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's an exciting time right now. Obviously, middle of camp, and got some good news obviously on Zach today. So that was obviously a big plus.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. And that's we just started getting into it, like literally just started talking about it. Again, shout out to you guys in the comments. Appreciate all you guys, Michael, Tommy, Jets Mess, Richard. Appreciate all you guys tuning in, all your comments, everything you guys are saying. So like Jets Mez points out, disturbing that this is the second time with that same knee. So yeah, I'd love Will if you could, chime in, tell me what you think about the whole situation.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, the kind of a crisis averted, obviously. Everyone I think thought, ACL or some type of season-ending injury, non-contact, going to cut like that, and then, obviously goes down limping. We obviously got good news. It seemed like somewhat good news, Friday night right after. It was maybe a PCL, which was a little concerning. It would have been the second time of the same ligament, back-to-back years. And then obviously there was a little bit of hesitation. The Jets got burned a little bit with the Becton situation of saying it was positive, and then obviously, end of the year. So, look, I think at the end of the day, everyone should be very happy he's going to play. If not week 1, maybe week 2 or 3, you're going to get hopefully almost a full season out of your quarterback, get to evaluate him. So, it's not ideal, obviously, and it makes the next couple of weeks a little less juice behind it. But at the end of the day, they've kind of crisis averted, and very minor procedure done, and that's a huge plus.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, man. Like, absolute huge plus. Like you were saying, we thought so much worse. Like, I remember, like you said on Friday, all the speculation we were talking about. But like, I think it was like Pro Football Doc, and he's saying that like maybe he tore his ACL. And I'm looking at his profile, and I'm like, my God, he's got 17 years experience. He's an ortho surgeon. I'm like, maybe he's right. Like, oh my God.
You're thinking, oh wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And like you mentioned, I think the Becton was, I mentioned it earlier, and I appreciate you confirming that, because that's kind of what I was thinking too, that was probably a major factor in Jet fans' minds. Because like, okay, we think he's good and, everything should be okay. But we thought the same thing then, right? Like they told us that Becton was going to be fine. And then, yeah.
And then obviously it was not. Yeah, no, I mean, look, he didn't even fully tear the meniscus, which is good. It was just a small trim of the meniscus, arthroscopic surgery, which is obviously huge. If he would have fully torn the meniscus, we're talking about a much different surgery and much different recovery time. But he'll probably maybe he'll play with a brace or a sleeve early on, similar to what he did last year. But once he's healthy and ready to go, he'll go back out there, and you obviously have to hope he gets kind of a little bit of a bump the way he came back last year and played much better in the second half of the year.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, man, without a doubt. Shout out to Jets Mess. He says you look like Flash, which is a cool thing.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm not taking.
I mean, Flash was awesome. So yeah,
I'll take it.
Savior of the universe, right? Save everyone.
I'll take it. I'll take it. It could be worse.
Exactly. It definitely could be. And yeah, Richard talks about how he tore mine 6 years ago, exactly like that. Said my ortho said the timing was to make it worse. Speeds up with arthritis. Said I'm fine now, mild discomfort every once in a while, no exercise restrictions. Yeah, like Will was saying, just absolute, best case scenario, because it could have been really like 2 weeks was the optimal thing. And we're looking at it now. It seems like the story or the consensus is that he'll be back week 2 and he might just miss week 1. And I'm like, okay, so we got Joe Flacco, the former Ravens quarterback, where the Ravens were like, he doesn't have it anymore. So he gets to come in week 1 and show them that he can still like be a starting quarterback. I think this is like literally like couldn't be better. Like it's awesome.
Yeah, no, look, at the end of
obviously
the day,
if Zach wasn't hurt, it'd be better.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Zach wasn't hurt, it'd be better. But look, at the end of the day, there's worse options than having Joe Flacco as your backup quarterback. Obviously, he have the playing the Ravens boost and that whole thing if that's what ended up occurring. But Joe's looked good in practice. He's still got a strong arm and still can sling it around a little bit. So again, it could be much worse if he misses one game. The Jets are playing a team in which they're a touchdown underdog anyways. So it's not as if he's missing a game where it's like a crucial must-have. Like, obviously you'd like to see them go out and win week 1, but it's one of their harder games of the year. So it's not as if, he's missing a Patriots game, Miami, something of that nature, where it's like kind of not must win, but that's a game you really want to have, Zach out there for, where, Flacco should be able to come. The Ravens are going to blitz a ton, and he's going to have to get the ball out of his hands. And if the Jets can protect him a little bit, similar to what Miami, he threw 300 yards against Miami, who plays a lot of similar coverages to what Baltimore does. So a lot of man coverage. The Jets have a lot of weapons. He should be fine, week 1, if that's the case, obviously.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Everyone's excited about Joe Flacco coming back into that old house and tearing it up. But they're a good team, right? Like you mentioned, it's a tougher schedule. Ravens have a quality defense, quality defensive line, so they'll be coming at that offensive line. Good run game. I mean, yeah. So, I know there was speculation Lamar may not play week one. I think that's out of the like he's definitely playing.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so, unless something crazy happens where there's some bad blood between potential contract thing. But I would assume he plays week one, and the Jets are going to have to shut down the run game and control him and tackle well, and give themselves a chance. Obviously, the Ravens' weapons don't necessarily scare you. I mean, Andrews is a very good tight end, but the Jets obviously added the Jordan Whiteheads of the world. Quan Alexander is more of a coverage linebacker, so you would hope he can kind of help in that aspect. Obviously Dobbins is kind of questionable for week one. We'll see what happens there. And then Rashad Bateman's a good player, but the Jets did just draft a top 5 pick at corner and pay DJ Reed. So you hope to see, them potentially, be able to kind of shut that down or at least contain them enough and run the ball well and not turn it over and score some points.
Yeah, and talking about the top corners, man, I mean, Sauce. We all know what we're getting in him. Like we knew, top cornerbacks guy in the draft, clawed his way up from, nobody really wanting him in college to being like the best guy that's available. But what about that trash talking? Like that's so interesting. Like you hear like he was talking smack to the Philly sideline. Like he's even got some of the Jets players riled up. Like I thought it was funny. They asked like some of them like what he was saying, and he was like, "Oh, we can't share that. Like that's not appropriate." But it seems like that's a good part of his game, which definitely I know you played yourself, so I'd love if you could like shed something on that.
Yeah, basically, look, that's part of his game, right? He plays cornerback. A lot of DBs like to chat and look, Sauce's his play backs it up. He's been fantastic during camp. Watching him in person, you just see he's a different kind of specimen. Like you don't really see that size and speed at corner, and generally speaking, obviously it's why he wasn't in the top 5. But he's in Tony Oden, who's the Jets cornerback coach. Like he's in his ear constantly, like talking with him. He's always off to the side working. It's just there's a work ethic and hunger from him, on top of the fact of him and Zach were kind of going at it a little bit on Wednesday. Zach ran it in and kind of tossed the ball at Sauce and, talking a little smack to him, and he's giving it right back. A lot of these young Jets players are definitely not short on confidence. You look at Garrett Wilson was, doing a little bit of talking himself on Friday night. So, these guys come in, they're obviously proven players, they're top 10 picks, but, Sal's kind of got these guys a little bit fired up, and, you've seen a bunch of fights during camp and things over the last week, and that's usually not just the dog days of summer, but a team that's kind of competing consistently. You see that more often than a team that, if the teams weren't, there's no trash talk, there's no fighting going on, like you kind of question it more than if there is.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Like I notice a lot of people, like I, do with the press conferences, I put out what Salah said on like, the fighting, and a lot of people were making that comment. And I noticed that there was like, other coaches, like high school coaches were kind of like echoing what you were saying, that that's a good thing because it shows the camaraderie and that they're playing really hard and they're right on the edge there. So that's an interesting way. Like as a fan, you don't always see it like that.
Yeah, you see it and you're like, oh, wow, they're fighting. Like that's a bad thing. But in reality, like you look at it and, the Jets' whole thing this year is like kind of going to that quote unquote dark place and like having 60% more than the team, another team and all this stuff. And like you if you preach that, you're going to have that fieriness, that kind of trash talk, that nastiness to your team, which is something that, it's going to not just see itself on Sundays or otherwise. It's going to happen in practice, and these guys are going at each other. The O-line and D-line go, hit each other 50, 60 plays of practice every single day for 3 weeks. Eventually, guys are going to get a little sick of each other, and that's what you saw kind of with Grant Hermans and Carl Lawson throwing punches, and Nate Shepard and Garrett Wilson almost went at it, which was probably not the best idea for Garrett Wilson, taking on a guy 100 pounds more than you, but that's, I guess, for another day.
Yeah, I remember someone was telling me, I forgot who, it might have been Grant. I remember someone was saying on, I think it was the Friday practice, that someone got into it with Carl Lawson. And it was so funny. They were saying they were at the practice that everybody kind of just came and like defended Carl and were like, what are you doing? Like, this is Carl Lawson. Like, get the hell off of him.
Yeah, no, I mean, Carl Lawson, I mean, it was like they kind of got into it a little bit, and then Carl Lawson just threw a couple of haymakers, which was obviously certainly interesting. But yeah, usually I don't really see punches thrown that much, but on that one, there was quite a few punches thrown, I believe, and it was I think it was it might have been Sunday, but it was pretty interesting to see. I don't know if I would be picking fights with Carl Lawson. I think Grant Herman's got in with Michael Clemens on Wednesday, probably two of the scarier dudes on the team, but I'm sure I guess he backs himself as well.
Which, that's a big thing to bring up, because I noticed, on Twitter, you pointed out that, Herman's been getting into some camp fights, and
I know he commented on it.
he commented, and also his dad
I know
commented.
that was
What I
pretty
thought was
funny.
interesting. I thought, yeah, I did too, but I thought like his dad's comments, like I'd love to hear what you thought because they seem like great comments. Like his dad was like, yeah, I raised him to be a good Christian kid, and I told him never to start a fight, but if he's in one,
You
he's
got to
gonna
finish
end
it.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was just like that. That's pretty awesome. And this is a guy like that you wouldn't maybe expect to make the team as a former undrafted guy. And like you mentioned, getting chippy means you're doing well. Is this like a sign that Grant Herman's could be really like coming on possibly?
I mean, look, they need depth at a tackle, and there's no question that like Chumadoga has been banged up at times. Max Mitchell's still a rookie, kind of adjusting. Dwayne Brown's just working himself in. Will probably practice for the first time Thursday, where he's doing more than just kind of conditioning and things. And obviously George Fant's coming back from a knee injury, and they need depth at tackle. And if he continues to have a solid camp, he could beat out a guy like a Connor McDermott or Greg Snott or other guys that are kind of competing for that like fifth tackle spot. Usually you kind of usually see them maybe they'll keep 8, maybe they'll keep 9. We'll see offensive line wise, but if they keep 8, probably you'll see Feeney make it. Obviously, I feel like Nate Herbig, and then you could see maybe Herman's try to push a Chuma Dogo or something like that. Maybe they keep 9 and he's a practice squad guy, but nevertheless, he's a guy that obviously has a little bit of nastiness in his game, and that's definitely not a bad thing to have on your offensive line, especially in that role of kind of that mauling, backup tackle. Usually gets into it with guys a little bit.
I couldn't agree more, man. And it does seem like when it comes to offensive line, Joe Douglas being a former offensive line guy himself, definitely seems like he has a type. Like I was sad that we didn't get to see more of Cameron Clark, and it's just tragic what happened with him because he was a kind of guy like that. Like I mean, he was like a nasty guy that like to put people down. Again, sucks with Becton, but it's the same kind of thing. Like we see that with Max Mitchell. Like it definitely feels like Joe Douglas has a type for those offensive line.
Yeah, he definitely likes that. That kind of nasty, guy as a backup, and can play either side. The Jets obviously need to keep guys healthy at offensive line, though. At the end of the day, I'm not sure they'd be in a great spot if any of the tackles, Brown or Fant, get hurt. We kind of saw it a little bit on Friday night. Obviously, the plays Zach gets hurt on. Max Mitchell got beat pretty bad, and Zach had to scramble. So, especially early on in the season, you play in the Ravens front four. Adafe Owing, of guy, Calais Campbell, and those guys are no joke. And then, week 2, you get Myles Garrett, and he's obviously near the top of the league, maybe a top 2 or 3 edge rusher. That AFC North is no joke. Obviously, the Bengals have their own set of Trey Hendrickson 15 sacks last year. Then week 4, you get Pittsburgh with TJ Watt. So they want to have, if that offensive line's clicking early on, the Jets are gonna have a chance in all 4 of those games. If the offensive line looks like it did early on last year before they kind of raided the ship, they might be in some trouble, to be honest.
Yeah, Matthias pointed out, like you were just saying, I'm like, I love the potential of Max Mitchell, but yeah, I mentioned it with offensive line. It's one of those few positions that like it still takes time to learn in the league. Like it's not like wide receivers, tight ends, you just can get thrown out immediately even as a later draft pick. Like that's why you see offensive linemen that go so high because those are guys like AVT that are ready to go like immediately day one. So like I agree with Matthias. Mitchell maybe not being ready yet, obviously being distance off, but I love his potential, man. Like I brought this up just to point it out. Like I looked at when we drafted him, I looked at what he did in college, and I was blown away he went as late as he did. Like this was a guy, you look at the numbers, and I'm like, I thought he'd be like a second round, maybe at least third round pick. Like in 2021, he had a 94.8 overall grade, which was first among all offensive tackles. He apparently only allowed 13 pressures that year with 430 pass blocking snaps. In just run blocking that year, he had a 95 grade. That was first among all offensive tackles, too. And like the stats, it's crazy. It goes on and on. Since 2020, he has a 2% only allowed pressure rate. That's third best. Since 2019, he's got a 93.1 overall grade. That's fourth best. Like, it's crazy. Like, I feel like this is a guy that could have been so much higher, like, that could really maybe develop into something special.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, he's got potential. I saw him down in Alabama for the Senior Bowl. He's a guy that probably projects more as a right tackle, long term, but he's got potential. He's a guy that probably needs a year or 2 to develop. I don't know. I don't know from a ceiling perspective. We'll see what that looks like. I think he can start in the NFL. I'll be curious to see how he develops. Ideally, he's a guy that you're looking at probably 2024. that time frame where, you're kind of probably the roster. Hopefully Zach's good and you're going to pay Zach in 2 years, and you need to kind of be younger at other positions. And maybe that's a spot for him at right tackle down the line. He's a nice player. I think I don't know that he's ready to play day one. And that's why the signing of Brown was so important, because you can't really, start a guy like Max Mitchell who's a smaller school, senior, where he needs the time to kind of develop to the speed of the game. We saw with a guy like Zach, who was the number 2 overall pick, needs to adjust, let alone a 4th-round offensive lineman. So I like Mitchell's potential. I think he can contribute down the line. I just think that he's a guy that needs probably a year or 2 to learn under John Betton, learn the system, get familiar with the speed of the game, and you'll start to see him make some strides. But he's going to get a lot of time in the next 2 preseason games. Dwayne Brown's not going to play a whole lot, and neither is George Fant. So you'll see a lot of Max Mitchell, a lot of Grant Herman, a lot of Chuma Edoga, a lot of Connor McDermott when he comes back, if he comes back. And, it won't be as pretty, but at the end of the day, those guys do need the reps.
No, definitely makes a lot of sense. I meant earlier you mentioned going to camp. Have you been able to get credentials for camp?
I just did it through. There's the tickets and stuff like that. The open practice has been able to go,
nice.
And then went one of the days on Wednesday when it was more of like a walkthrough thing. So yeah, it's always fun to kind of get out there and see some of these guys in person and practice. You get to see a little bit more in practice than sometimes in the games. You get to see how these guys work and individual drills and things of that nature before going to a team. But every single practice I've been to, they haven't been in pads, which is super annoying, but it's okay. It happens.
Yeah, and I saw on Twitter you were mentioning it, some of the practices, like stuff that was going on, and yeah, it's interesting, with the non-pads, especially like those, helmets. But
yeah, no, they need to shed those. Yeah, they got to shed those things. Those are pretty.
So ugly. You're saying like get that right off the helmet, like stat.
Yeah, no, I mean I get why they do it, but apparently like you saw Salah talk about it a little bit of just like it's like now that you have that on, you kind of almost use your head more, but. We'll see. Obviously, I think I think those come off. I'm pretty sure they come off next week once they've got 2 games under their belt and a certain amount of practices.
Yeah, Steven's making fun. I appreciate it, Steve. I'm just nodding along. I must look like a bobblehead over here, just bobbling about. Appreciate the heads up. Thank you, my man. Don't want to be bobbling too much. But yeah, man, you mentioned, Joe Flacco looking so good. And that seems to be a big story in camp. Like all the beat writers have been saying how good he's looked. And even last year in the few games he played, I thought he looked really good too. Like Elijah Moore's huge game was with Flacco. Like I still think like his deep ball is still awesome.
Like, yeah, he still can sling it. Yeah, I mean, look, I think pretty positive. Like the Jets, like with Zach Wilson at quarterback last year, like this is not complimentary to Zach, but at the end of the day, it's kind of pointing out the obvious here, but like they were 30th in EPA per play with Zach, and then every other quarterback, they were 13th. Like they were a top 15 offense with Flacco and Josh Johnson and Mike White, which is pretty crazy just to show you how much talent they have now, as opposed to what they did last year. Flacco looked good against the Chargers. He had the one really bad interception, but Chargers, even that 2 years ago, that season was kind of hard to watch. And then looked good against the Patriots, especially in that first half. And then obviously last year against Miami, he had the one, he got strip sacked where like he definitely didn't see the guy coming and got absolutely annihilated. But overall, obviously Elijah had a really nice game. And, I think, look, he's a pro's pro. He's won a Super Bowl. There's no doubt he can still, at least be a serviceable, NFL player. And if they need to have him go week 1, they will. And, you got to hope for the best and hope they get a little momentum and, revenge game aspect. But yeah, he's looked good at camp. The offense looks a little different, obviously, but Joe doesn't really move the way Zach Wilson does, in terms of creativity and outside the pocket. But he obviously can still, swing the ball around the yard a little bit.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point too, because obviously they're playing with Joe, but the offense does change, right? Like the way they run it. Joe, I mean, his mobility is like probably nothing.
Pretty much, yeah, but it's not much. It would be if he runs it all, it will be purely out of necessity, not by choice.
No, so that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting. But I feel like his deep ball, man, is like something that I think it was Michael Nania pointed it out maybe a few days ago. It was something I watched last year. I still feel like his deep ball placement is really good.
Oh, no, he could. That'll never. He'll be 60, 70 years old, still be able to throw a go ball. There's no question Joe can toss around the ball. Like his deep ball has always been awesome, and I don't expect that to change. He might not move as well, and some of the other stuff, but in terms of that, no, I don't think that'll ever change.
Yeah, and then going back to Zach Wilson, way back earlier, where we went on some tangents, which is always fun. But earlier we were talking about, you were saying how this year is so important to evaluate Zach Wilson, and it really is, right? Like Joe Douglas has put together this team. He's got all the right pieces in place. He's put together everything needed. Now we just got to see the quarterback. Like I believe Zach could be really great, but this is that opportunity. He's got everything around him, which our prior GMs didn't always do that.
Yeah, no, look, he's certainly invested in the receiver core. He's certainly invested in tight end, something that obviously no one can complain about. Obviously, some of these guys have to pan out. The Garrett Wilsons, Elijah Moores, and they've shown potential, or they have a ton of potential. It all comes down to the quarterback, but there's certainly the amount of excuses, for Zach or whoever's going to be playing quarterback week one is certainly minimal. They might be a year or two away from being a contending championship level roster, but there is a ton of talent. They've invested a bunch of money. They've invested a ton of draft picks. The coaching staff, like everything is kind of there to be a very successful offense. And you saw flashes of it last year at points, the Bengals game, obviously the Titans game, other things early on against Tampa. But now with the raised amount of talent up front offensively, as well as the skill position guys, it's kind of all on Zach or whoever, or Joe Flacco to kind of operate the offense, take what's given, and be able to put up some points. And the defense being better should also help.
Yeah, Matthias says, I don't know he says, Zach has to use his head. He has all the physical tools, just needs to play smarter. I think, it's preseason. I mentioned this before. I'd love to know what you think. I feel like preseason's a time to try things, right? Like to see if this works or if this doesn't work. Like we see teams going for it on fourth down a lot in preseason because it's a lot of time to check and be like, oh, well, it's better to find out this doesn't work now or this route something. So I look at it, I think he's a really smart kid. Like I feel like, he's got a great head on his shoulders. He's always learning. I'd love to, what you think.
Yeah, no, look, I think frankly, the interception was really lazy. That was just purely like trying to be a little too cool, just like stare down Corey Davis the entire time. That happens. You like to see it kind of, not happen. I mean, the only one that the Garrett Wilson first throw was a little concerning just because I felt like you should not be missing that. That's an easy gimme throw. Zach's a really smart kid. I almost think he works a little too hard. And if that makes any sense, like he's trying to be too perfect, tries to overthink stuff at times. When he plays free and he's just kind of out there ripping it, like he looks great. You saw the Bucs game, you saw the Titans game, you saw it points during the Eagles game, and others. And then there's other games where it's clearly he's overthinking. The Patriots game, like the first half could not have been more overthinking, and he's trying to be perfect and he just can't get it right. So I think he's a smart kid. I just think he needs to just take what's given to you. Like Mike White has way less talent than Zach Wilson, and he was able to operate the offense effectively against the Bengals. Like that's kind of the blueprint of take what's given, let the guys that you're paying a bunch of money to make plays and make your job easier. And if he does that and sprinkles in one or two of his explosive, level talent, a game, the Jets will be in pretty good hands.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think you're right. I definitely think you're onto something with overthinking because that definitely does seem to be the problem. Because when you hear all this stuff about him, I liked it. I had first actually kind of compared it to like some of the things that you hear about Tom Brady, right? That he's a perfectionist. He tries to play over and over and over. Like he wants to know why it didn't work and why that broke down. So yeah, we saw that last year. Like, when he was throwing the ball, he was missing a lot of his short passes. And everyone's like, oh my God, he can't throw. He's got no accuracy. But that was never a problem of his. Like that wasn't a problem in college. So I think that's definitely a big thing. And LaFleur's, I think everyone's been kind of LaFleur, the coach. They've all kind of been saying that it's really more of, getting everything down and getting everything right.
Yeah, no, look, he's got to just, again, you take what's given to you. You give yourself a chance. And if he just if he just takes a deep breath and just like when he's playing, free, he looks great. On Wednesday, I think he had 2 incompletions the whole practice. Then, he had days where he has no incompletions. Like that's awesome. He was making real, true incremental progress. It's just not doing the overthinking stuff, not trying to be a hero. Again, you run out of bounds there as opposed to trying to make somebody miss. You're in a much better situation than obviously they are now. They dodged the bullet, but again, that probably could have been avoidable if you just run out of bounds, don't take any unnecessary shots. Because, yeah, obviously if he doesn't blow out his meniscus there, he's going to score, but like it doesn't, it's a preseason game. Who cares? You don't need to do that, and so kind of tempering that back a little bit.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I think, Matthias is saying it, and everyone was saying it at the time, like it's a preseason game. Like, why are you not going out of bounds? Like, why are you, if it's, won a regular season game and it's the fourth quarter and you're trying to make something happen. And yeah, that's totally understandable. But in the preseason, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it was a bad move, bad decision. And like I said, we're just lucky that it wasn't as bad. But if anything, Zach says he always approaches everything as a learning experience. Maybe he'll do the same here, right? He'll approach that as well. Okay, that was a bad thing. Because, we look at guys like, a lot of mobile quarterbacks like, the Patrick Mahomes of the world, for example. They run, but they don't take the hit. You know what I mean? Like they'll slide or they'll get out of bounds. So that's definitely a big thing that I think he's learned. This is probably a major learning experience because, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, it's like just learn from your not mistakes, and like just kind of give yourself a chance, stay healthy, stay on the field. Look, sometimes, a lot of times, your backup quarterback will play 1 or 2 games during the year. It'd be nice for the Jets to have a quarterback play all 17. We haven't seen that in a very long time, but just again, keep learning from your mistakes and things happen. Again, even the regular season, like just go down there, slide, all those type of things. These things happen. But if Zach continues to just learn from his, kind of what he's doing and making sure, he continues to get better and, progress constantly and not, get worse, then that's, kind of all that really matters, right? At the end of the day, just keep getting better.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah, it's little by little. And Salas, said the same things. So, one of the last things I'd love to, talk to you about before we get going is definitely the Jets tight end room, because I know you used to play tight end yourself. So I'd love you can share a little bit about that. Like, I think, if I remember correct, you played for Townsend?
Yeah, I played at Townsend, and then I played at Cortland.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, from the Jets tight end room perspective, look, I would assume based on kind of everything we've seen during camp, Tyler Conklin will probably be that, like, targets leader in terms of the tight end room. I think he's shown a really nice ability to pretty much catches everything. I think he's the third best drop rate in terms of like least amount of drops last year. Really good route runner, big body, obviously. And then you look at, CJ Uzomah does a little bit of everything. You'll see him in the pass game. He's a good run blocker. Jeremy Ruckert's looked good, early on here. Obviously got a late start to camp with a foot injury. Even Lawrence Cager, Kenny Yeboah, they've got this is the deepest Jets tight end room I can remember, at least in my lifetime, where there's, really good upside, but also, depth in terms of CJ Uzomah gets banged up. They've got a 3rd-round rookie right behind him, or Tyler Conklin gets banged up. You have CJ Uzomah. So the tight end room looks really good. They need to have a nice tight end room for this offense, but also, young quarterback. You want to make sure you have a security blanket and things of that nature. So should help in pass pro. They can, CJ Uzomah can chip on a guy and help out George Fant or help out, Dwayne Brown at times. So look, if they get good production out of that room, probably means the offense is going to look a lot better, because the last couple of years, or for a long time, I guess, the tight end room has not looked pretty, to say the least.
Yeah, no, that's totally true, man. Our tight end room has literally been like non-existent. Like last year, we were like, I was crazy excited when we brought in Croft. I was like, here's a guy that's a good blocker. Maybe he could be a good receiving option. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the main guy I'd love to talk about is Tyler Conklin, because I'm so excited about him. Like right when we brought him on, like he was a guy that wasn't on my initial radar because he wasn't considered one of those top flashy, top pick tight ends. But then you look at him, you watch him play, you look at the numbers, and you're like, man, this is a guy that could really break out. Because like last year was his first year really starting, and you mentioned the Jets not having good tight ends for a while. He put up 61 receptions last year. I had to look it up. It blew my mind. The Jets haven't had a tight end put up more than 61 receptions since 2011.
Jeez.
And that's Dustin Keller. Like, that is crazy long ago. So, like, this is, again, a guy like first year starting, like almost 700 yards or, 61 receptions. I feel like, I don't know what you think, but I feel like he's a guy that, could maybe break out as a tight end.
Yeah, no, he should break out. I think he's a guy that you'll see be incredibly productive. Again, I think he'll be one of the leaders in, receptions for this team. Probably more so than, he might be number 2 right now, like, going into the year behind Elijah Moore in terms of like who's going to get the most targets. It's not to say Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis and CJ Uzomah and all these guys won't get the ball as well, but he's a guy that I would not be surprised if you see, 6, 7, 8 catches a game where he's, 6 for 50 or, something like that, be a threat in the red zone. He's just a really good route runner. He's got really good hands. I think he caught 61 balls last year. Now he's in an offense without Justin Jefferson. So there's a little bit more targets to go around. But yeah, I like what, Conklin brings. And I think he's a good guy in the locker room. He's a guy that people like to play with, and he's incredibly talented as well.
Yeah, and I loved you that you mentioned like that would be amazing. Like maybe it could be, like Elijah Moore and Conklin of the two top Jets yardage. That'd be
Yeah,
awesome. That would be
yeah. At
really
least in
sweet.
terms of
I'm down for that.
receptions, even if maybe if in just in terms of receptions, then Garrett Wilson's more of the big play guy. Who knows? But I know that they have a lot of different guys that can make a lot of things happen. And if Zach or Joe gets the ball in their hands and they can hold up front, I think they're going to score points. I a little bit some questions still a little bit more about the defense, but if their pass rush looks as good as it's supposed to, and Sauce and DJ Reed play well, the defense probably should be better than expected as well.
No, I totally agree, man. And just another guy to bring up as well, because again, love to hear your opinions on the tight end. As a former tight end yourself, I was a big fan of Jeremy Ruckert out of the draft. Like I liked him last year when they thought he might go, because I looked at him as a guy like this is a guy that can block, hasn't really had that many receiving opportunities, but when he does, it's legit. Like I don't remember the exact game, maybe you do. There was that game where it was like the end of the game, and he made that like one-handed crazy touchdown catch
Big
to
Ten,
win it.
yeah, it was Big Ten title game. Big Ten title. Yeah, it was. He's a good player. He's a big dude. You think he's 6'5", 6'6", 250. Really nice hands. He's able to contribute in the run game as well. So he'll be a guy that they'll probably kind of bring along slowly. Obviously with the two veterans ahead of him, but I think he'll get reps, and he's a guy that I think you'll see contribute this year. I don't know how much, but I think you'll see him contribute for sure. And he's a nice player with a big time future.
Yeah, like you're saying, he's a guy, maybe next year, gets the opportunity to break out or something.
Yeah. Look, I think he's a guy that he's a guy that has a chance to break out. But I think he's more likely, he's more in that, like he's further ahead in terms of a developmental perspective than a guy like Mitchell, but he's not going to contribute as much as a Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall year one.
Makes sense. So one last guy I'd love to talk about and get your opinion on is Lawrence Cager, because he had a freaking awesome first game. So it's interesting to think, can he make this roster? Do the Jets keep 4 tight ends and he's the 4th?
Yeah, I think I did my 53-man prediction before before camp started. I definitely got the DJ Montgomery one wrong. I just threw, to try to make a best of the situation. I thought they would trade Mims, which I still think will end up happening. But like Cager's got he's transformed his body. He provides this kind of, high upside guy who's, a former receiver, obviously, made some plays. I thought, had a little bit of a stint in 2020 where, he was getting some reps, and then, he was hurt the year before. So we'll see what happens with Cager, but I like what I've seen so far. If he can contribute even a little bit in the run game, his ability to contribute in the pass game is going to go a long way, because obviously that former receiver, background and, good route runner, good hands. He knows the system. He's been here. So I'd like to see him make the roster. I think I'd much rather him make the roster than some of the other guys that are kind of down the depth chart at receiver and things of that nature. But we'll see. But I think the Jets would like to keep him in the building at the least.
Yeah, and he's a guy, he's completely transformed his body too. Like, that doesn't even get enough credit. Like, you can maybe correct me. I think like when he was a wide receiver, he was like 215 or so.
Yeah, he was like 215, 220.
Something.
Yeah, he's put on 20, 25 pounds.
That's a lot.
Yeah, he's certainly not not a small guy. And he's put on a ton of weight. And I think he's like 8% body fat and all the stuff Sal was talking about. So he's a guy that he certainly has the body type now to play tight end. And if he continues to play like he did Friday night, he's going to give himself a really good chance to make the roster.
Yeah, you can't argue. Yeah, Friday night he led all Jets receivers with 40 yards, had the longest catch of the game. It was 29 yards, and he was the highest graded of all the players. He had a 92.7 grade. So yeah, if he does pretty much that again for 2 more weeks, makes a really good argument that you want him on the team.
Yeah, he's a guy that, if he can, like I said, continues to contribute, shows some ability in the blocking, pass game. Obviously, 40 yards on Friday. He's going to get a bunch of reps, next week, and especially a ton, week 3 against the Giants. Got to take advantage of and keep producing.
Couldn't agree more, man. Couldn't agree more. As you guys know, if you have any questions, quick, if you want me and Will to answer, bring them out in the comments. Let us know anything you were thinking or opinion or something you were, anything like that. But one last thing I would bring up is you mentioned, Cager possibly getting an opportunity on the roster. Another guy I really like for that is a guy like Bam Knight. Like I look at Bam Knight and I'm like, if we're going to keep a 4th running back, he's not going to see the field that much anyway. I mean, we know what Ty Johnson is. We know. Well, we kind of don't know what LaMichael Pirine is, but he's been around for a few years. I'm like, I kind of want Bam Knight to get that spot. Like, I really like him.
Yeah, I think Bam Knight's a guy that at worst will be a practice squad guy. I'd like to see him make the roster. I think it'll be depending on how many tight ends they keep. If they keep more tight ends or more running backs, something of that nature. I know they're obviously going to want to keep as many D linemen as possible where they're super deep. But yeah, Michael Piran's not making this roster. I'd be surprised if Ty Johnson made it. I think it'll come down to they want to keep Bam Knight in terms of that practice squad role or maybe that fourth running back. I think it'll definitely be Carter, Hall, and then probably Tevin Coleman, who they like a lot, that veteran presence in the room and things of that nature. But yeah, I like what I've seen so far, and he runs hard. He's a different type of runner than they have, in a Breece Hall and things of that nature. So we'll see. But I like what I've seen so far from Knight. He's another guy who's going to get a ton of reps and a ton of time to kind of shine over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's what the preseason's all about, right? It's about, we know who a lot of the starters are. We get to see who could potentially make the team.
Yeah, it's end of the day, all you want to do is, give yourself a chance and see some of these young guys produce and see how they can kind of, give themselves a chance to make the roster. And that's, competing. And, a lot of these guys are underdog stories, which is always, awesome. And, it's a great time it's a great time for some of these, draft picks, undrafted guys, all those type of things.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. Without a doubt. I really want to thank you for coming on. It was
of course
awesome talking to you about the Jets and everything. All you guys out there, if you haven't, if you could please subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly, greatly appreciated. Will, before we get out, if you could, tell all the people where they could find you on social media and stuff.
Yeah, so Twitter handle, Instagram, all that stuff. Will PA11, and then Turn on the Jets podcast. Episodes, 2 episodes a week. Travis, big time guest every episode, and talk through it and kind of analyze the team, obviously, and things of that nature. But yeah, appreciate you having me on, and obviously enjoyed it, and continue the great work.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Thank you again for joining me, and appreciate all you guys out there tuning in. Thank you for being part of the Take Flight Spin Fire podcast. Hope you guys have a great, great rest of your week, and see you next Monday.